Erev Tov Tiberius, Boker Tov in Santa Barbara, and to all our friends on the West Coast who have been facing these challenging fires, all of our hearts and thoughts are with you this morning. All your friends at America-Israel Friendship League are thinking about you and hope you can join with us as we join with people from around the world in our Friends Indeed experience. My name's Wayne Firestone. I'm the executive director of the America-Israel Friendship League, and we're here in fall. Summer's over, sort of, and we are nonetheless continuing with our virtual tour series, our uber popular series where Reuven Solomon takes us to places where we've been or where we want to be or we hope to be oh so soon. And we really are going to take you to two magnificent cities today. We want to know where you're calling in. I see people from Tucson and Miami, from Knoxville, Tennessee, and Toronto. So tell us in the chat where you're calling in from today and your favorite memories from either Nazareth or from Haifa, two amazing cities just down the road from one another. You know, I mean, if it's not terrible traffic, you could certainly get there in less than an hour. We have people calling from Atlanta, Los Angeles, Costa Rica, Chicago, Skokie, someone from the Bahai Gardens, the Village in Florida, Hilton Head Island, South Carolina, West Hills, California. Okay, people certainly are someone from Netanya, and Delray Beach, Florida. So it's great to see people. You've been with us throughout the summer. You've been with us the fall, and you've seen how Reuven can transport us. So today, Reuven, you're going to transport us to two very different sites in northern Israel. We're going to start with Haifa, and Haifa, Ir Ha'atid. This is David Broza sang about this. He's been singing about this song, and he promised us the city of the future. Has it lived up to the expectations? Do people still get up at 4 o'clock in the morning and go to work there?
Yes, Wayne. First and foremost, a very warm welcome to all our friends of the AIFL. It's a real pleasure for me to be with you again. And Haifa indeed is not only the third largest city in Israel, but it also has a reputation of being a working city and the city of the future. Today, we're going to start, excuse me, we're going to start with our tour of Haifa, and from there we will continue to Nazareth. Haifa, as I said, is a city of close to 300,000 residents, the third largest city in Israel after Jerusalem, which has about 750,000, and Tel Aviv, about 500,000. We like to say Haifa is getting close to 1/3 a third of the largest cities of Israel. And we have a nickname for these cities. The nickname is the cities of pray, play, and pay. And of course, pray, of course, Jerusalem, play Tel Aviv, and pay Haifa. Why pay Haifa? Because Haifa is a working city. The population, as I said, is the third largest in Israel, with about 82% of the population being Jewish and 14% Christian Arabs and about 4% Muslims. It covers 25 square miles, and it's not mentioned at all in the Bible. Why? Because Haifa is a name that was given later on to an area that an ancient city moved to, and that ancient city was the city of Shikmona. From the time of Solomon, it was actually the northwestern border of Israel in those days, where the purple dye was produced. So the mention of Haifa in the scriptures, in the Old Testament, is not specifically naming Haifa, but the area you're looking at now, where Shikmona, the ancient town, was, above it, on the Cape of Haifa, is a cave in the Carmel Mountains that you're looking towards the north of now, where, according to tradition, Elijah comes out of his cave to go up to the heavens in a chariot of fire. Haifa is actually a natural harbor that is created by the Carmel Range that drops down after running parallel to the Mediterranean, drops down into the Mediterranean, creating the Cape of Haifa and, and a natural harbor and the Haifa Bay. Now, as I said, the mention, Haifa is exactly where you see it, with the red dot pointing very close to it, on the western shores of the Mediterranean, to the west, closer to Lebanon than to Tel Aviv, a very short ride to Lebanon. And you can see how the Carmel Range actually dips down, creating that bay that is being hidden by that red dot. Now, the many sites in Haifa that are really worth visiting, but we're going to concentrate more on Haifa as a cultural city, as a city of coexistence, as a city that has a couple of very important learning facilities. And of course, the highlight of Haifa is a visit, even though there are many other things to see. The highlight of Haifa is a visit to the Bahai. But let's start with the educational facilities in Haifa. What you're looking at here is the beginning of the very first university pre-state in 1912 of the Technion. The Technion, we like to call it Israel's MIT, and a really wonderful institution. And when it was established in 1912, it actually starts what we like to call the War of Languages. You know, pre-state, during the Brits only come in 1917. So this is during the Ottoman period. Pre-state, they have to decide on a language, a teaching language in the Technion. And there's a debate, of course, between French, which was considered the international language, English, which is the new international language, and German, which is the language of scholarship in those days. And at first it was there was a furious debate as to whether it would be German. And in fact, at first it was leaning that way, because the first name was suggested was Technikum. But it soon, the debate was won by those who were proponents of Hebrew being the teaching language, and that's when its name was changed to Technion. You're looking at part of a large campus with some 14,000 students on the Carmel Mountains over Haifa, and it is certainly an institution of great value. In fact, I don't know, some of you may be up to the news of them working at the Technion now furiously on developing a quick COVID testing, breath test that would give instantaneous results. We're already now at the second of the major learning centers in Haifa, and this Haifa University Tower can be seen from a long way away, from way across the bay, from Acre, and from way out to sea even, because it's on one of the higher ridges of the Carmel Mountains with a beautiful campus. Haifa University has something like 18,000 students, a very large campus, and beautiful grounds right on the Carmel Mountains. In the next slide, you'll see the major building on Haifa University, and they have quite a few different departments. It's really it's the fourth university in Israel. When it actually begins, it begins associated with the Hebrew University in Jerusalem. And it's only in 1972 that they declare independence and become a university in their own right, the Haifa University, one of the top 3 universities in Israel, or 4 universities in Israel if you include the Technion. So, I didn't mention that the Technion has 20% Israeli Arab students. That's about the percentage of the population. And Haifa University has double that percentage, 40% Israeli Arab students. And this may result from the fact that Haifa is a wonderful example in Israel of coexistence. What you're seeing on this slide are the conversing of 3 holidays that happened, if I remember rightly, 3 years ago, 2 years or maybe 3 years ago, of Hanukkah, Ramadan, and Christmas, all coming together at the same time. And Haifa, one could say, becomes a very good example of coexistence, perhaps because of what happened during the struggle for Israel's independence. Haifa was actually part of the area that the UN decreed will be part of the Jewish state. And at that stage, it had 74,000 Jews and about 71,000 Arabs, split between Christian Arabs and Muslims, a little more Muslims. And in the struggle pre-state, after some 250 Arab families left Haifa, the leadership, religious and municipal Arab leadership, told the people, don't leave, you don't have to leave, don't take part in the fighting, stay in your homes and you will be safe. You will not be hurt by the Jews. And Haifa was one of the areas where most people stayed, and today is really a good example of coexistence between the different cultures, the different holidays, and it is a city that has most of the NGOs that deal with coexistence situated and based in Haifa. In fact, shortly in one of the coming slides, you shall see a wonderful project. Here you see, of course, celebrations of Christmas in Wadi Nisnas, where there's the majority of the Israeli Arabs in Haifa are living. And in the next slide, you'll see celebrations at night. Here you can make out, of course, the Bahai shrine lit up beautifully, and the Dan Carmel above it to the left, and the Christmas tree and the Hanukkah. And this time Ramadan didn't fall in together with as far as the calendar was concerned. But here you're looking at celebrations of Christmas in the German colony in Israel by the Bahai shrine, as multicultural as you can imagine. The next slide will also show you the German colony and the celebrations at night with the beautiful Bahai shrine above. Now, we talked about multiculturalism, and there's a wonderful project initiated in Haifa from kindergarten upwards of an organization called Hand in Hand, that from kindergarten upwards educate in 2 languages, bilingual, Hebrew and Arabic, and coexistence from a very early age in Haifa. The next slide will also show you how this happens at a very young age. Hand in Hand, a wonderful project that is sort of hopefully an example to what can be done everywhere. So that gives Haifa the reputation of being a good example of coexistence. Here you're actually looking from the top of the Bahai gardens down to a street that we're going to be exploring in just a moment, the German colony down below. That main street that heads from the top of the Golden Dome all the way down to the harbor is the main street of the German colony of Templars who came during the Ottoman period to Palestine. They were devout Christians, very immersed in the Old Testament, and they were of the Messianic branch and believed that their coming and settling colonies in the Holy Land will hasten the coming or the return, if you like, of the Messiah. And thus Haifa actually was the very first of the German colonies to be settled by these colonialists, who were an excellent example of modernity in the time where Palestine was under the rule of the Ottomans, and the Jewish migrants and immigrants and the local Jewish population had lots to learn from these very industrious German colonialists, colonies. However, it ends in a sad story because when the Brits with Allenby conquer in 1917, the German colonialists, of course, belong to the enemy, and they're exiled to Egypt. And after their return, they resettle in the 6 colonies that they have, including in Haifa, until, unfortunately, towards the Second World War, they exhibit Nazi affiliations. In fact, some, perhaps not all of them, but 30% become card-carrying members of the Nazi Party. And in 1937, when at the coronation of George VI, all 6 colonies, German colonies, fly the swastika. This convinces the Brits to exile them, to exchange them for other British subjects in areas controlled by Germany. And those who cannot be exchanged, some 500 of them, are actually exiled to Australia. So today Australia has the largest expat German colonialists, and until the Brits come, they were really a help and an inspiration to the Jews who were settling the land, because this was during the period of Ottoman rule where everything was backward. But once the Brits come, their value as inspiration decreases. And surprisingly, actually, when you see the next slides, that they had these affiliations to, you're seeing the German colony here by night, of course, but they had these affiliations to the Nazi Party, especially since in the beautiful homes they built, some of them remain in their more primitive unrenovated status, you'll see, and others have been renovated into beautiful guest houses, museums, restaurants even, because of course they were exiled by the Brits, and the colony becomes a British area until Israel's independence. In the following slides, you'll see a couple of the buildings, and what I want to point out to you in some of these buildings, this is one that hasn't been renovated yet. But in the following slides, you'll see some of the buildings that have been renovated. And this one, for instance, with, in German, of course, an inscription over the door of the doorway. And even though I can't understand German, I can tell you what's written there, because just the word Jerusalem tells us all about it. And the right hand there, if I forget the old Jerusalem, let my right hand forget her cunning. And there are inscriptions on most of the doorways taken straight out of the Old Testament, out of Psalms, and it's a little surprising that despite that, the sad story comes to an end with their exile as being affiliated with the Nazis, at least most of them. This is one of the renovated old buildings. They built them, incidentally, by hand, brick by brick, stone by stone, and they actually brought into this very backward Palestine during the Ottoman period modernity, factories and so on. But as I said, the story ends a little sadly. From here, we're looking again from the top of the Carmel Ridge right across the Haifa Bay. And I'd like to point out to you, you can see the Bay Area very clearly, the crescent, that comes out into a point. And that point, of course, is where we were on our last virtual visit, Acre. The next city up from the further point of the bay is Naharia, close to where I live, and that little white furthest jutting out cliffs you see is Rosh Hanikra. Rosh Hanikra is actually the northwestern limits of Israel, because from there, along that ridge that you can see very clearly running across, is actually Israel's border with Lebanon. Until that border, until that ridge reaches the finger of the Galilee that pokes from the Hula Valley into the Bekaa Valley, and Lebanon in the north and Syria on the right. It's off the map here, of course, but that's the border that is being pointed out to you now with that green arrow. As I said, and you know, one of the main attractions in Haifa, in a visit to Haifa, is in the next slide. You will see the Bahai Shrine. The Bahai are one of the last of the monoistic religions to be formed, and it was actually started by, conceived by a man in Persia of those days, Iran of today, called the Bab, the Gate. And he was persecuted and executed in Persia, but not before he nominates a successor who is actually going to form the religion. And his name is the Baha'u'llah. He becomes known as the Baha'u'llah, the glory of God. As I said, the Bab is executed, and his body is actually gathered and hidden by his 18 disciples, led by Baha'u'llah, when they make their way all the way to Ottoman-ruled Palestine. And the Baha'u'llah points out this site on the Mount Carmel where the Bab should be buried. The Baha'u'llah himself is also, because he was a tremendously charismatic man, was spared of, apart from a brief period of imprisonment in the Acre prison, but they couldn't obtain this land until after the, or very close to the end of the Turkish period, to actually carry out the burial of the Bab in the shrine. What you're looking at here is the Halls of Justice, where once every 5 years, the rules and regulations of the Bahai faith are made up by, modernized by the delegates, who are, the Bahai. If you want to know a quick, brief idea of their beliefs, I guess that the best way to understand it is by remembering the words of John Lennon's beautiful song, Imagine. Imagine the world with no borders, no languages, just one, no religions, just one. Very universal in its approach, and celebrating the glory of our Maker. And they actually have delegates that meet and modernize the religion so it stays relevant all the way through. And here you see, as I said, the Hall of Justice. In the next slide, you will see the legislative halls where they meet, and you're seeing the golden dome, of course, as the Bahai shrine. It's about 50 years that they have to carry around the remains of the Bab before he is buried below that golden dome, before it's built, of course, below the Bahai shrine in a couple of rooms that are actually still in existence underneath that shrine. Here you see the beautiful visitor center of the Baha'is in the side of the Carmel Mountains. And in the next slide, you'll see the entrance to the visitor center. And here, one can go into rooms and read some of the writings of the Baha'u'llah. And incidentally, these gardens, I need to tell you, have 9 gardens above and 9 below. And in the video following, you shall see that one of the gardens is actually above the main road that leads up to the Carmel, one of the main roads that lead up to the Carmel Mountains. Here, a view from the bottom of the German colony up to the Bahai Shrine, 9 gardens below and another 9 gardens above. Not because the number 18 is important, but because the number 9 is. The number 9 is a very important number, and Shoghi Effendi, who is the grandson of the Baha'u'llah, and also the designer, along with his father-in-law Maxwell, of the architecture and the design of this garden, points out that 9 is important because it is the prime largest single number, perhaps also because 9 and 9 make up the 18 disciples of the Baha'u'llah. But there's also a Kabbalistic, if you like, connection, because Baha, even today in Hebrew, but certainly then using the Semitic alphabet, adds up to 9. Baha, Bet Aleph, Hey Aleph, Baha. And here you're looking at a drone effect over the beautiful Bahai Gardens, where in just a moment you might get a chance to actually see what I meant when I said that one of these gardens is actually above a main road, one of the main roads leading into there you see the curve and a road down below it, but and there from the top you see the Hall of Justice, the very neoclassic style of building, as I said, designed by Shoghi Effendi and his father-in-law Maxwell Sutherland, who designed these beautiful gardens. Incidentally, one can actually tour the gardens. I would suggest touring from top to bottom and not from bottom up. Of course, escorted by the Bahai, who incidentally have, here you see the road and the garden I spoke of, above the road, who incidentally, the workers in the garden, who were volunteers, Bahai from all over the world. There are some 6 to 7 million Bahai estimated in the world, most of them actually Indian Bahai, in India, poor. So one could ask, where does the fortunes come from for the type of building and the investment here? And the answer, of course, is in the Bahai faith's tenet that a follower believer would leave all his worldly goods to the Bahai, and a religion modern religion of such I would say humanistic perhaps, and universal values attract many very wealthy people who have left their fortunes to the Bahai. The work done here, of course, is all by volunteers, Bahai volunteers who come and spend 6 months to 3 months to a year working for their keep and their food and their board, and spending their days keeping these beautiful gardens the way they look. Down below, as I said, you're looking at the German colony right at the bottom of the gardens. Now, the Bahai is a major attraction, of course, in Haifa, but it's not the only thing to see in Haifa. Just south of Haifa is a beautiful, is a very important camp, athlete, that should be visited. There are many other things to visit in Haifa, but I'm running out of time, and we're going to go now.
Reuven, before you go, just it's hard to leave Haifa without at least referencing the beach. There is a nice beach there that I've been at a few kumsits, and I think we want to acknowledge that for all of our beach lovers out there who are missing the beach this summer. But also right near there is by virtue of both the University of Haifa and Technion's presence, a high-tech industrial park, Matam, where many new industries and technologies are going from the university into industry.
Absolutely, and most of the buildings there have names that you will be familiar with from NASDAQ, all the big companies.
Very successful companies as well. So again, I know as we used to say as the crow flies, but in this case it's as the drone flies. We're going to move to Nazareth. But if folks want to put any questions for Haifa or Nazareth to Reuven in the chat, or if you're with us on a watch party on Facebook, if you put it into if you send us the question, we'll pass it on to Reuven. So Reuven, take us down the road.
Excellent. Next stop, the little town of Nazareth. Now, as you see an overview of the little town of Nazareth, why the little town of Nazareth? Perhaps a play on the belief of some minority Christian sects who believe that the birth of Jesus actually takes place in Nazareth and not in Bethlehem. I don't belong to that school of thought, but here in the very center of the picture, you're looking at what makes Nazareth really important to Christian pilgrims, and that's the dome that you're looking at over the house of Joseph and Mary, where, according to tradition, and we'll get to that soon, the Annunciation takes place. Nazareth has a population of some 80,000, and the population of Nazareth today is totally Arab Israeli, 70% Muslim and about 30% Christian. Now, once upon a time, there was a Jewish Nazareth, and you can see it in the picture above, that today has been renamed to stop confusion. When we talk about Nazareth, it was called Nazareth Elite, Upper Nazareth, but today they've got an independent name, and they call it Nof HaGalil. That town has 40,000 residents, of which 20% are Israeli Arabs, just like the national population. But in the old town of Nazareth, where you see on the mapping between Haifa and Tiberias, is where one of the largest Arab towns in Israel that had a population, incidentally, that was on the as far as the UN partition plan was concerned, was going to be part of the Arab state. However, in the War of Independence, it was taken by Israel and has since been part of Israel proper. You know, Nazareth has great attraction, of course, for pilgrims through the ages. And I want to talk about a couple of these pilgrims and their impressions of Nazareth, with perhaps quoting what they have to say with their next slide. Now, that's an old postcard, not as old as the Pilgrim of Piacenza, who in 570 writes, "We came to the city of Nazareth where many miracles occur. in that city, the Jewish women are of such beauty that in the whole country, no more beautiful Jewish women can be found. They say this, that it is a gift from Saint Mary to them, for they say that she is a relative of theirs. Fast forward 1,300 years, and we have Mark Twain's impression of the women of Nazareth. This fountain of the Virgin is the one which tradition says Mary used to get water from when she was a girl and bear it away in a jar upon her head. The water streams through faucets in the face of a wall of ancient masonry which stands removed from the houses of the village. The young girls of Nazareth still collect it by the dozen and keep up a riotous laughter and skylarking. The Nazarene girls are homely. Some of them have large, lustrous eyes, but none of them have pretty faces. These girls wear a single garment usually, and it is loose, shapeless, of undecided color. It is generally out of repair too. They wear from crown to jaw curious strings of old coins after the manner of the bells of Tiberius, and brass jewelry upon their wrists and in their ears. They wear no shoes and stockings. They're the most human girls we've found in the country yet, and the best natured. But there is no question that these picturesque maidens sadly lack comeliness. What happened? What happened, of course, was time. And if you follow the timeline, the people that the pilgrim of Piacenza saw and spoke to in 570 may have had claim to the ancient residents of this little town of Nazareth that would support, because of its very limited water, perhaps maximum 40 families. And they may have had some connection to the residents, but in 613, the Persians conquer and a total overhaul of population. In 620, 630, the Muslims come along and once again a change of population. 1099, the Crusaders. End of the 1200s, the Mamelukes, and once again a total change of population. And after the Mamelukes, the Ottomans, 1517, and after the Ottomans, the Brits, 1917, and after the Brits, the Israelis, 1947. So the residents of Israel, of Nazareth, cannot have any justification claiming their ancient origins. But as far as the women of Nazareth are concerned, I'll leave it up to you to decide when you come and visit in person. The next, Nazareth is really an attraction to pilgrims because of the belief that there at the home of Joseph and Mary, the announcement of the upcoming birth is made. And in the Proto-Evangelion of James, portion 11, he writes that, talking about Mary, and she took the pitcher and went out to fill it with water. And behold, a voice saying, "Hail, you who have received grace, the Lord is with you. Blessed are you among women." And she looked round on the right hand and on the left to see whence this voice came. And she went away trembling to her house and put down the pitcher, and taking the purple, she sat down on her seat and drew it out. And behold, an angel of the Lord stood before her, saying, "Fear not, Mary, for you have found grace before the Lord of all, and you shall conceive according to his word." Now, it's interesting that James in the Proto-Evangelion portions the announcement, the Annunciation, in two parts. First, at the water gathering spot, and then at the home when Mary puts down the pitcher and takes out the purple. What does it mean, taking out the purple? Simply taking out the sewing box, because the Jewish women of that time, when nervous perhaps especially, would take out the sewing box and sew that purple thread through the rest of the threads that was a practice with the holy garments. But taking out the purple meant getting out the sewing box. The water source itself is about, I would say, less than 3/4 of a mile, less, half a mile from the home. So there were two churches. of importance. One, the Church of St. Gabriel, that you shall see in the next slide, that becomes the focal point of the Greek Orthodox, that encompasses the water source itself. And the second one, of course, we will visit after, the Annunciation, where the home of Joseph and Mary is thought to be. This Church of St. Gabriel, because of St. Gabriel's announcement, is today a Greek Orthodox church built upon earlier Byzantine churches. And you can see here the iconostasis, the barrier of icons that separate the worshippers from the priests who perform the rituals behind the iconostasis, the wall of icons. You'll see in the following slide the water source itself, beautiful decorations everywhere, and the water source itself, the oldest part of the church, in the next slide, where it is advised today, because the water, of course, is nowhere near the quality it used to be a couple of thousand years ago, even though some pilgrims still insist on taking sips of that water. I think it would be more suitable just to sprinkle and not to take sips of, but you know, this is the old water source where all the churches following right up to this last of the churches, St. Gabriel, still stands today. From anywhere in the distance, as you saw in the movie, in the short video as well, what dominates the old part of Nazareth is that modern black dome on the Basilica of the Annunciation. It can be seen from all over Nazareth. And I want to take you to the next slide, where you'll see the facade of this beautiful church, Basilica, that was built only in the 1950s, replacing the earlier church that stood there from the 1700s, and the earlier churches underneath it, of course, from the very first part of the Byzantine period, with the Crusaders in 1099 enlarging the church tremendously, and then in the 1700s, a later Christian church. And now, yes, I will speak a little louder. And now, in 1955, Professor Manzio, who uses Antonio Bellucci's plans in part, creates this beautiful basilica encompassing some of the Crusader church and all of the Byzantine earlier churches. The courtyard of this church, in the next slide, you shall see, is decorated with many, many donations from the different countries of the world of the Virgin Mary and the infant Jesus. And you can already notice in the immediate portraits that you can see that each country sees the Virgin Mary and the infant in their eyes. Japanese for Japanese one, Chinese for Chinese, and Dominican, and so on and so forth. And there are some beautiful portraits outside, but inside the church are even more beautiful portraits. What I want to show you now is one of my favorite artworks of this bronze door that leads into the bottom part of the church, the most important part of the church, the old part of the church. And this bronze door, from top left coming down and then around to the top right, tells the story of the New Testament in its panels. And if you bear with me, I'd like to go panel by panel to talk about what you see in one doorway, all of the New Testament. Shepherds watch their flock by night while the birth takes place. Of course, most of us believe in Bethlehem and not in Nazareth, but the birth takes place in a cave. The three wise men, bottom left, and to the right, you can see 8 days later, and 8 days later, and of course, outside of the dark cave, the circumcision, as is still the tradition in Judaism, 8 days after birth, circumcision. In the next panel, down below, you shall see to the left the massacre of the innocents, and the main picture, the flight to Egypt, and below it, Jesus helping out with the carpentry and work with Joseph. And here you see the two panels one up left top and then left bottom that we spoke of. The next panel is the bottom right. And here you see already the ministry of Jesus with the baptism taking place in the Jordan River by his cousin John the Baptist, and the dove appearing above. To the right of that, you're seeing the healing in Capernaum of the lame man. And on top of that, you're seeing something that we spoke about in one of our previous tours, our tour to the Mount of Beatitudes, where Jesus speaks, I'm sorry, it's reminding me that I have to hurry a little, where Jesus speaks his most famous sermon, the Sermon on the Mount. And of course, the fishing vessel on the Galilee. And in the top final section, what you see here, of course, is the Passion story. The three Marys, bottom right, coming to be told by presumably the angel Gabriel after the crucifixion that you see in the center, to be told by the angel Gabriel, "Why do you come looking for the living amongst the dead? He is not here, for he has arisen." And in the top section, you're seeing to the left of it, the men of Galilee looking up into the sky and the ascension. All of the New Testament in one doorway. And it is a beautiful doorway indeed. Around the side of this beautiful doorway, we get inside the church itself. And here you see to the bottom left of the picture, the focal point. This is the back of the home of Joseph and Mary in Nazareth, where, as far as the proto-evangelion of James is concerned, the final announcement is made to Mary while she takes out her sewing box. Now, on the other side of, outside of the walls of this church, are additional homes, and the entrance of this home would have been from the other side of the wall, but you can make out bedrock there, and the older foundations of the Byzantine churches to the right and left. You can see there's something above as well, and we shall be visiting up above top, but I want to show you another scene of the bottom part, where incidentally, in the next slide, you will see Mass conducted in on the foundations of the ancient Byzantine church, with looking into the doorway of the back of a cave that was the focal point of this church, of course, with a stairway, an ancient stone stairway coming down from the outside into what was once a cave until it was broken up and excavated, and the churches building successively their churches using the home and the site of the final announcement or Annunciation as their relic. And now we'll go up top with the next slide. And up top you'll see a very beautiful, elaborate church with some very large portraits and artwork donated from the Catholic communities around the world, with just before the altar an oculus that looks down into the relic. And in the next slide you shall see what I mean. We're looking, of course, at the altar in front, and the next you saw the oculus down below. Now you're looking at the up, tilting your heads back, looking up into the dome, and in the next slide you'll see the full dome that is actually like an upturned lily. Very symbolic. Professor Mazzio was certainly a little bit of a Kabbalist, and he has a lot of symbolism in his architecture. Lily, symbol of purity, white, pure, for the Virgin Mary. You'll notice that the segments that he has initiated here are number 32. And why 32? Because in numerology, in Hebrew, of course, it signifies the 32 names of God. Now, in each one of these 32 segments is a decoration that looks like an M. Do you see it? Like little M's. If you count the M's, you're going to count 23. M for Mary, M for Messiah, M for man, because man is made in the image of God. And thus, 23 is the mirror image of 32. So he delves in a little bit of Kabbalah with this beautiful design of the dome. It is certainly a church to be visited because of its beautiful artwork as well as its architecture, and its courtyards full of beautiful paintings. But another thing that one should visit in Nazareth is Nazareth Village. And I would like to end our visit to Nazareth with a little bit of a glimpse of life in the time of Jesus. This wonderful attraction is meant to replicate life in the first century in Nazareth. Incidentally, I can't show it all to you, of course, but one can even sit down and have a biblical meal as part of the visit. It's an hour and a half to 2 hour visit, where many of the elements of the visit are actually archaeological, where there's a vine press from the time and an olive press from the time, but many things had to be rebuilt in order to show you actually the way things worked, including a synagogue from that period, and people in period clothing who demonstrate the skills and artwork of the time. Certainly very much a visit that I would recommend to cap off a visit to Nazareth, a visit to Nazareth Village, where one depicts life from the first century. Now, with this, I've ended the official part of our tour, and I'm now available for whatever.
So, Reuven, it's amazing looking at those olive trees and thinking about the roots and the origins of this very ancient and old city. And we started the tour with Haifa, the city of the future. Tell me, we had a couple of interesting questions come through about, first of all, is it safe to visit Nazareth? Obviously, from someone who's not been there. I was there in February with our Presbyterian delegation, and the most, I think, my biggest fear was the kanafe, like how much kanafe I could possibly get away with eating without being in the danger zone to get back on the plane. But in all seriousness, Reuven, you've been there many times. Your impression of what it's like?
Being in Nazareth is like being in Tel Aviv. Big difference, of course, from where you are, but from the home and safety point of view, there's no issue whatsoever there. It's part of Israel and part of Israel proper. It is the largest single Arab Israeli population, and for many years it actually had a Christian Arab mayor, and alternatively with a Muslim Arab mayor. It's absolutely part of Israel and absolutely safe, and there's no issue there whatsoever.
Also, unlike the Tel Aviv area, there is more rainfall. Sage is asking us about what the annual rainfall in the northern region looks like.
The annual rainfall, actually, it's pretty good in that area. I don't want to give you a number that might mislead, but I would say we get the middle of the range from we get something like 25 millimeters of rain. That's an inch in the areas that get no rain almost, and we get 780, 800 millimeters in the areas that get a lot of range. So I would guess, and this is just a guess, that Nazareth would get about 400. It's in the middle.
Which is a lot, certainly, in the region. We have people calling in today, Reuven, you should know, from Hawaii, as well as Renana, from Cincinnati, from Manchester, England, Johannesburg, South Africa, the Pacific Palisades, Houston, and Milan, Tennessee, in Western Tennessee. So we have people literally from all over the world. There's a question from somebody about the earlier presentation from David about there was the area known as the checkpoint, which maybe you could explain the historical reference there. But the question actually is about the pollution in that area. For a long time, that area was very congested because of the industrial waste, etc. What's it like today?
It's improving vastly. It's still not up to scratch, but it's getting there. First of all, the pollution comes from, of course, it having been the end of the Iraqi pipeline company's oil pipeline that ran all the way from Iraq to there for treatment, and then shipped out from Haifa port. Today, it works in the reverse. Crude is shipped in, it deals with the crude and then moves it into Israel rather than the other way around. And that was the beginning of its trouble as pollution. Continued with ammonia-based companies producing there. We've moved them. We're moving them, and we've moved them because Haifa had a very high incidence of breathing problems and all sorts of difficulties with the effluent coming out of these factories into the stream, into the river that flows in, and we're cleaning it up. We're cleaning it up. So it's vastly improving. But the checkpoint, because of the British actually making Haifa for many, many years, no longer, Ashdod has taken over now as the major port, but for many years, the one major port in Israel, and of course, being a major port, the Brits during the British Mandate period had to have good and big control of it. So the checkpoint was anyone coming anywhere into the port area had to pass through this British checkpoint, and that name has stuck.
Great. I'm going to try to sneak in one or two more quick questions. There were questions earlier about the Bahai temple, and somebody asked the question. Just Laura asked, "Are there lots of stairs, like to be able to traverse this?" And then there was an unrelated question from Joyce about whether people of the non-Bahai faith are restricted from traversing the different levels of the complex. Is it only, are there certain areas that are only for Bahai faith people?
The answer is they're totally open, but controlled with a guide. You can't go in and wander around on your own. You're in with a guide who will take you through the gardens, into the visitor center, into the shrine itself, into the rooms of the shrine to read from the writings and so on, but with a guide and not on your own. It's not a visit that one can do on their own, but everything is open. Everything is laid open for the visitor.
Lots of stairs?
And the stairs, well, you know, on an average, the Carmel range there is about, what, 600 meters above sea level? And you saw the sea level down below where the bottom garden is. So it's quite a climb through 18 not short stairways if you're coming from the bottom, but it's a pleasant walk down from the top to the shrine itself, which means 9 stairways down through some beautiful gardens. And in fact, if one doesn't want to walk stairs at all, one can actually enter from the roadway that you saw halfway through where the Bahai shrine itself is, straight into that level, the shrine level with the 9 gardens below and the 9 gardens above. And once again, the symbolism, 18 disciples with the Baha'u'llah, being number 19, the central shrine. And one can save walking the stairs totally in one of the more beautiful gardens, that central one of the shrine.
Well, thank you, Reuven. We're coming up to the top of the hour, so I just wanted to share two quick notes. First, this whole period of COVID that we've been running this Friends and Deeds campaign, we've been doing this for all of your pleasure, and we're just, the responses we've received from people all over the world has just been amazing. One of the responses from one of our webinar enthusiasts and member of our board, Dr. David Milch, was to offer a match for everyone that makes a donation to the America-Israel Friendship League during the month of August and September, up to $1,000. He is going to match every shekel, every peso, every dollar that comes into this organization to help promote and continue this kind of programming, which we intend to continue on into the year. So please take a look at our website and look for an opportunity to show us a little love and show us a little bit of support for these great programs that we're bringing with you. Each month, we bring a different virtual tour episode, as you know, with Reuven as your professional tour guide. Our next tour with Reuven, mark your calendars, October 25th for Tel Aviv, Yafo, a wonderful pairing in region. We're really looking forward to that. Reuven, as they say, Acharei Chagim, after the holidays. And in addition, you don't have to wait that long, because this coming Sunday, we're bringing you a fascinating program about a topic of great interest at the moment, both in Israel and in the United States, of cannabis, of medical marijuana, and the industries that have developed around that, and the various uses for various treatments that are involved with that. So we have a fascinating panel just this Sunday as part of our Friends Indeed series. So we're at our allotted time. You've been a wonderful virtual audience for us today, and our live audience here with your many, many questions. Everybody have a safe week. We look forward to seeing you soon. We've got some great programming coming to you all through the rest of the fall, and for those of you celebrating during the high holiday season. Thanks very much, and have a great week. Shavua Tov.
Shana Tova.